In the middle of the night I was binge reading a romance manga, cheeks burning and completely hooked, when I saw the author announce an indefinite hiatus. Refusing to accept it, I rushed into her DMs to beg, Katie, please give us a little more content, my lady, just toss some feed to this poor little chicken. The author sounded miserable as she explained, sorry, the inspiration for the comic comes from my wifey. But lately she's been really cold to me, and she keeps mentioning some other man's name to make me aware of my place. I'm afraid she wants a divorce. I feel so awful I can't even bring myself to pick up my pen. For the sake of my CP, I heroically stepped in to save the ship. Well, what a coincidence. I'm actually a top-notch mediator, and I'm best at resolving marital conflicts. How about you add me on WeChat so we can talk in detail? I'll teach you a few tricks. The other party got so excited he immediately sent over his own account. I looked it up. Good grief, wasn't this the arrogant husband who'd made a pact with me right after our flash marriage that we wouldn't interfere with each other and would keep our distance? So I was the wifey who'd been neglecting him. But I was clearly just abiding by our agreement. Still, for the sake of getting more chapters of that manga, that night I took the initiative to knock on the bedroom door across the hall and tentatively asked, I suddenly feel really cold. Could you come over and warm my bed for me? The man, trying to act composed, froze for a second, the tips of his ears instantly turned bright red. After work, I went home. Jeremy Anderson had already finished cooking. When I opened the door, he happened to be standing with his back to me, untying his apron. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, he really did look like a proper husband. I glanced over as if nothing had happened, silently tightened my grip on my handbag, and headed for my bedroom. He looked delicious, sure, but none of it was for me. Because before we got married, this man had already made an agreement with me, we wouldn't disturb each other, we'd keep our distance, and we'd each live our own lives. I hadn't taken more than a few steps when my husband suddenly coughed, his voice drifting in from the living room. You've been getting off work pretty late lately. Have you eaten? I tilted my head and answered with a smile, overtime, you know. I haven't eaten yet, I was going to order takeout in a bit. Did I bother you, coming back at this hour? Not really. After working overtime several days in a row, I was already exhausted in both body and mind. Then last night I found out my favorite manga author had announced a hiatus. Now every time I get off work I feel like I'm about to drop dead, and I have zero energy left to deal with this cold, aloof man. I forced a couple of fake smiles and was about to retreat to my bedroom when Jeremy called out to me again, how about we eat together? I happen to make a bit too much, and I can't finish it by myself. I raised my brows in surprise. I hadn't even said anything yet when he started to panic. Don't overthink it. I really just made too much food, that's all. I know. It's not like we're a real couple. I won't flatter myself. There were 4 or 5 dishes on the table, including my favorite, stir-fried fish tofu with chili. Since he'd taken the initiative to invite me, I naturally saw no reason to be polite. As soon as I sat down, a pair of long, pale fingers reached toward me. My gaze followed them upward and landed on those beautiful, fox-like eyes of his. Let me get you some soup. Oh, thank you. Sorry to trouble you. In the 3 months since we got married, this was apparently the first time we'd actually sat down at the same table for a meal. And this man's cooking was surprisingly good. I lowered my head, stirring the rice in my bowl, memories flashing through my mind of the time I'd begged him to marry me. I still felt a little embarrassed. Half a year ago my family had started pressuring me to get married. They introduced a short, chubby guy, saying he'd give a $200,000 bride price, and they kept pushing me to go back to my hometown no matter what. I'd been scared out of my wits. Then I happened to overhear my boss chatting with a friend, comforting him about also being pressured to get married. I immediately plucked up my courage and asked about that friend. The first time I met Jeremy, I'd been so cowardly I even blushed. Because I hadn't expected him to be that handsome. He was about 185, tall and lean, with a high, straight nose. Standing under the light, his skin looked almost luminous. He gave me a brief, expressionless glance, and I instantly shrank back in shyness. From the beginning, Jeremy laid down 3 rules. We only had to put on a show in front of our parents. He was an engineering guy, very busy, not interested in marriage, and I was not to interfere with his private life. Later, when he found out my lease was about to expire, he graciously allowed me to move into his place, rent-free. During the first month, to show my gratitude, I kept trying to please him in little ways, seizing every opportunity to talk to him. But Jeremy misunderstood and thought I was harboring some improper thoughts about him, so every time he saw me, his brows would knit together. Eventually he even said directly, Miss Clark, if you overstep again, we'll have to terminate the contract. Terrified, I apologized over and over, okay, Mr. Anderson, I'll never talk to you again. So I ate this meal as cautiously as possible, not daring to make the slightest unnecessary sound. Midway through, my phone rang. I hurried to the balcony to answer it. It was that new supervisor, urging me to speed up my progress at work. When I came back to the table, I was in an even worse mood. Then I remembered that my favorite manga would never update again, that my spiritual sustenance had been completely cut off, and life suddenly felt utterly hopeless. For a moment, my nose stung sharply, and my throat felt as if it had been filled with lemon juice. Right there in front of Jeremy, I actually choked up. "Susan, what's wrong?" My sudden wail scared him. He jumped to his feet and then quickly sat down right beside me, handing me a tissue. I hiccuped twice through my sobs, eyes red, and asked in a small voice, "Can I talk to you about it? Will you find me annoying?" "Of course not. Go ahead." Jeremy seemed to remember the warning he'd given me before, and he looked a little embarrassed. He blinked, avoiding my gaze, and lowered his head, rubbing the pads of his fingers together. With his permission, I took a deep breath. "It's that bastard at the company, Edward Jordan. Do you know how disgusting he is? It's bad enough that he calls me into his office every day at work, but he won't leave me alone after hours either. I'm already home and he still calls me. Every day, the moment I open my eyes, I'm reporting to him. I've literally begged him to spend more time with his wifey and kids if he has any, to stop being so obsessed with work, but he says he's single." I was crying my eyes out and didn't notice Jeremy's face growing darker and darker. "Is he very young?" The question came out of nowhere. Wiping my tears, I nodded vaguely. "Yeah, he's not even 30 yet. Younger than me." I froze, suddenly at a loss for words. That was actually a hard one to answer. Because I didn't know how old Jeremy was. When we went to get the marriage certificate, I'd forgotten to check. Judging by looks alone, of course Jeremy seemed younger. When he saw I wasn't saying anything, he reminded me, "I'm 26 and a half. Then he's older than you. He just turned 29. The words slipped out of my mouth. At yesterday's team building event, my work buddy and I had spent the whole time gossiping about the new boss. That much, at least, I knew perfectly well. Jeremy didn't respond, he just looked at me quietly. The air suddenly grew a little awkward. No, I didn't mean you're old. I meant he's old and a total headache. My boss really is a fussy old man. You're still young, okay? Heh. I rushed to fix it, but it was useless. He lowered his eyes, and his tone turned distant again, just like when we first met. "I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Leave the dishes. I'll wash them tomorrow morning. Good night." It was barely past 8. Clearly, Jeremy was upset because of how I'd put it. "Oh. Good night, then." My stupid mouth. I'd managed to kill the conversation again. Back in my bedroom. I tapped on Jeremy's WeChat profile picture and hesitated for a long time, wanting to praise his cooking and thank him, but after typing a few lines, everything felt awkward, so I deleted them all. Forget it. He and I were just partners in an arrangement, not a real couple. There was no need to make things so uncomfortable, better to keep our distance as much as possible. I thought that after such a long day, I'd finally be able to fall asleep early tonight. But out of habit, I still clicked into that manga that had already stopped updating for 3 days. With no new chapters, I simply reread it from the beginning. And after the rewatch, I loved it even more. The male lead in that manga was practically the reincarnation of a sly little green tea schemer, always using every trick in the book to seduce the heroine, while her emotional radar was completely broken and she never realized he liked her. The newest chapter had cut off right when he was about to coax her into confessing to him. At 1 in the morning, I was still wailing in the comments section. The comment thread was flooded with the same line over and over, "I can't die in peace." After screaming in the comments, I tapped on the author's avatar and opened a private chat. Katie, my lady, please give us a little more content, just toss some feed to this poor chicken. My lady, I'm willing to give you half my salary if you'll just come back, okay? My lady, will we ever meet again? My lady, please don't abandon me." Halfway through my hysterics, she suddenly replied. "Sorry. Because of real-life reasons, I really can't keep drawing anymore." I jumped in shock. I honestly hadn't expected the author to still be online at 3 in the morning. My lady, you're actually still awake. What's wrong? Tell me, what kind of worries are messing with your creativity?" 5 minutes later, she really did bare her soul to me. "To be honest, the inspiration for this manga comes from my wifey. But lately she's been getting colder and colder toward me. Not only that, she keeps bringing up another man's name. I'm in so much pain, you probably can't understand. That kind of pain makes it impossible for me to even pick up my pen. Every time I look at this work again, I feel like I'm just deceiving myself. My wifey doesn't love me. Maybe she's never had even the slightest bit of affection for me. After reading those messages, I felt like I'd just bitten into a giant chunk of gossip. Good lord, what kind of resentful husband storyline was this? The author of such a sugary, Mary Sue-style romance manga was actually a man? And he even seemed like an utterly devoted, loyal puppy of a man? Sure enough, art really does come from life. My brain went into overdrive. This was no time to just sit and gossip. How was I supposed to comfort this man, who sounded like he was about to be abandoned by his wifey, and get him to pick up his pen again? My fingers were still trembling over the keyboard as I typed. Useless brain, think. Come on, think. I had to get my lady to keep drawing. I couldn't go without food, this was my spiritual nourishment. Oh, right. Didn't I once spend a whole year working as a community mediator, dealing with every petty neighborhood dispute under the sun? The cases I handled the most were couples fighting. Honestly, when it comes to marriage, as long as one side shamelessly hangs on, it's very hard for the two of them to truly sever ties. And judging from this lovesick guy's story, his level of shameless persistence was probably far beyond that of your average simp. All the better. When it comes to marital problems, this is my specialty. I used to be the community's star mediator. My lady, this app censors certain words, so it's not convenient to talk in detail here. Let me add your WeChat and we can discuss it properly. I'll do everything I can to help you win back your disappointed wifey. I absolutely won't let you become a desperate husband. Nervously, I sent the invitation, and this male lady sent his account number over without a moment's hesitation. Really? Then I'll be counting on you. But strangely enough, when I entered that string of numbers on the Add Friend page, it showed that I'd already added this contact. I looked again. Hey, wasn't that Jeremy's account? I searched it 5 more times in a row and it still showed the same account. My smile completely froze on my face. My lady, did you maybe type one of the digits wrong? No, I didn't. My profile picture is a white Samoyed. I stared at the white Samoyed on my screen, and for a moment it felt like all the folds in my cerebral cortex had been ironed flat. Katie. My not at all familiar fake husband and my favorite manga author were using the exact same WeChat account. You've got to be kidding me. Could you please give that account back to the real, my lady? I yanked the blanket over my face and let out a series of soundless screams. Oh my god, what kind of cosmic joke was this? That stone-faced man actually drew shoujo manga in private? And the heroine was modeled after his wifey. Was that me? Could it really be me? Legally speaking, I was his lawful wifey. But Jeremy treated me like poison. How could I possibly be the cold, unfaithful wifey he was talking about? And I hadn't even changed my heart in the first place. After a long internal struggle, I still couldn't bring myself to give up on that discontinued manga. So I created a little alt account and sent him a friend request. Now that I knew who he really was, all my previous enthusiasm vanished. I couldn't even bring myself to call him my lady anymore. Luckily, Jeremy spoke first. But the moment he started, he began sending wall after wall of text. He wrote from the very first time he met his wifey all the way up to the last good night he'd said to her before going to sleep that evening. My eyes were hurting from reading, and I finally couldn't help cutting him off. Hold on. You said your wifey keeps mentioning another man's name, how exactly does she bring him up? A few minutes later, a fresh wave of accusations arrived. I've noticed she's been coming home late from work these past few days. When I asked her why, she said in this really cold voice that she was working overtime. But a few minutes later, that man called her. She didn't answer in front of me, she went out onto the balcony. I listened carefully and heard her laughing while she was on the phone with that man. She said he was her new supervisor, but the look on her face was all wrong. When I asked about his age again, she answered 29, without a second's hesitation. She knows her new boss's age perfectly, but she doesn't know mine, and we've had our marriage certificate for months now. I stared at the screen, dumbfounded. Wow. This was some truly vigorous, full-scale slander. I was so mad I wanted to stab Edward, use his head as a soccer ball, and boot it straight into the department store, and yet in Jeremy's eyes, that's the kind of relationship he thought we had. Isn't it possible you're just misunderstanding her? He's just an awful boss who loves squeezing his employees dry. It's perfectly normal to know his age, colleagues chat about that kind of thing all the time. I tried to defend myself, weak and feeble. Jeremy went full nitpicker, then why doesn't she know mine? I'm not even a topic she chats about. Me, damn. At this point I completely failed to understand how this man's brain worked. He was the one who'd warned me before not to get close to him, to respect boundaries, and now that I was behaving myself, he suspected me of having an affair. If you're really that suspicious, why don't you stake her out a few times and pick her up after work? That would make things easier for me too, I wouldn't have to squeeze into the subway. And, forgive me for asking, but were you and your wifey really that close before? From what you wrote, it sounds like after saying goodnight, you each go back to your own room. Reading his earlier essay, I honestly hadn't felt like he was talking about me at all. Above the chat box, the words, typing, appeared. I waited so long I was about to fall asleep, and he still hadn't answered. The next time I opened my eyes, it was my alarm screaming that woke me. Jeremy still hadn't answered my question from the night before. Instead, he'd coolly transferred me a $5,000 consultation fee. That was when I caught the faint scent of a business opportunity. When I got to the office and looked up, I ran smack into my boss. I tugged at the corner of my lips on instinct, all ability to control my expression gone. Edward frowned and raised a hand to touch the side of his face. Do I have something on my face? No. I forced out a smile. I just zoned out and didn't see you, boss. He tugged at his suit jacket and awkwardly unbuttoned his cuffs. Come to my office later and report on your progress. What the hell, didn't I already report last night? Was he in the early stages of dementia? I rolled my eyes in my heart, but kept a respectful face. When I got back to my desk and hadn't even fully sat down, my coworker Tim grabbed the back of my swivel chair and yanked me over to her side, practically vibrating with excitement. Susan, I've got a huge scoop. But I can't guarantee it's true, because it sounds a bit crazy. I heard Edward is getting transferred. I lit up. What's crazy about that? That's definitely believable. I would happily kneel to receive this blessing. Tim shushed me nervously. Hey, I'm not done. Do you know how ridiculous the reason for the transfer is supposed to be? Word is he requested it because he's fallen for a girl in our department, and office romance isn't allowed, right? Hiss. Okay, that did sound pretty far-fetched. But even if that's true, it's not like the girl has to like him back. There's no need to avoid suspicion at all. Tim shook her head over and over. No, they definitely need to avoid suspicion. Here, you see each other every day. If she turned him down, it'd be even more humiliating. True. Once he confessed, he'd have to leave whether it worked out or not. In that case, I really hope this rumor turned out ripe and juicy. Please, let there be a benevolent soul to take this scourge away. Right before I went to Edward's office to report, Jeremy sent a message. He said he happened to be passing by today and would pick me up after work. The excuse was a little abrupt. But it did seem like he'd actually taken my advice. That meant the manga's comeback was just around the corner. Feeling smug, I tapped on Edward's office door, smiling so hard I forgot to rein it in. What's got you so happy? Edward glanced at me. I immediately reined in the corners of my mouth and pulled out the documents. I was just about to switch on the display next to us and start my report when he stopped me again. Wait, no need. I already heard it all last night. Then why did he call me in? To mop the floor? I stood there in a daze, and before I could react, a line of absolutely thunderous words shot into my ears. I have something important I want to talk to you about. I've already booked a restaurant. Just the two of us. What the hell, there was no way I was having dinner alone with this man. Huh? Something important, are you firing me? Of course not, Miss Susan Clark. I just want to have a meal with you, as someone who's pursuing you. Edward stood up, his expression solemn. It felt like a bolt from the blue. I nearly blacked out. Sin. So I was that so-called benevolent soul. I bolted out the door without hesitation, and I'd barely made it to the company entrance when Edward came chasing after me like a piece of clingy tape. Susan, wait. I'm serious. Just give me a chance. A chance my ass. Boss, did you hallucinate your way through work? No. After more than a month of interacting with you, I've realized I really like. Ayakak, shut up, don't say it. Before he could finish, I slapped a hand over his mouth. As we wrestled, a short honk sounded behind us. I turned, and through the windshield, my gaze collided with Jeremy's. I instantly yanked my hand away. A wave of inexplicable guilt washed over me. Ugh, this development felt all kinds of wrong. Who's that? You know him? Edward turned to ask. I remembered the confidentiality agreement about outsiders. I had just gotten the word friend out when a clear male voice cut in. I'm her husband. Jeremy had gotten out of the car and, apparently, had heard our whole conversation loud and clear. I stared at him in shock as he naturally took my hand and laced his fingers through mine. Hello? You're the boss who keeps making Susan work overtime. Huh? You're her husband? I've never heard Susan mention she was married. She doesn't even wear a ring. Oh, it was love at first sight. We had a flash marriage. We were planning to get rings a few days ago, but you kept scheduling my wifey for overtime. That's what delayed it. Jeremy's expression was still cool and his tone still mild, but somehow he didn't feel quite like his usual self. I stood there between the two men, frozen like a statue. Edward opened his mouth, then closed it again. In the end, he just muttered an awkward goodbye, and I wasn't feeling much better myself. Once we got in the car, my whole body felt prickly. The only sound in the car was our breathing. It really did feel like I'd become an unfaithful wifey. But that wasn't right, we weren't a real couple to begin with. Why was the atmosphere so weird? So, thanks for stepping in back there. I honestly didn't expect someone working a crappy job like his to fall for an employee. Probably fell in love with his drill instructor back in high school military training too. Head down, I toyed with the little rhinestones on my manicured nails as I joked. Jeremy smoothly followed my lead. Yeah, he does look like cheap goods. Really good at throwing himself at people. I blinked, thinking I'd misheard. What I mean is, what normal person falls for the boss who exploits them? Did he not think it all before confessing, or does he think he's in some kind of Otom game? Jeremy clarified with a perfectly straight face. I was even more stunned. I'd thought his silence just meant he was a stiff, aloof engineering type. I hadn't expected his tongue to be this sharp. Then again, you could actually tell from his manga's plot. The contrast with this man was huge. If the male lead really was based on him, that is. After a few lines of small talk, the atmosphere still didn't ease up. I leaned my head against the window and pretended to sleep. In what felt like the blink of an eye, the car stopped in front of a jewelry store. Susan, I think from now on, if you're in trouble, you can tell me. I opened my eyes to find an enlarged handsome face very close to mine. Jeremy was looking at me intently. His eyelashes were like a little fan, trembling, so thick and so long. My breathing went soft. I was staring so hard I felt like my hearing had dropped. I misheard him. What? Like today. If that guy harasses you, you can tell me earlier. I can help you figure something out. Oh, him. Honestly, I didn't know he was going to say all that. He just suddenly came out with it today. If I'd known, I definitely wouldn't have asked Jeremy to pick me up. He was already paranoid enough as it was. Great. Now he'd probably secretly swear never to update that manga again for the rest of his life. So, to be on the safe side, we really do need a pair of wedding rings. Jeremy took my hand and led me into the jewelry store. By the time that sparkling diamond ring slid onto my finger, I was still in a daze. Jeremy asked me if I liked it. I nodded. $200,000, gone in a single swipe. Really, you don't need me to chip in? Back home, I carefully tugged at the hem of his shirt and asked. Not that I'd actually planned on paying. After all, spending 2 years' worth of savings from a crappy job on a ring really didn't seem worth it. No need. But you do have to take a photo and post it on your moments. Jeremy held out his left hand, eyes crinkling with a bright smile. Actually, forget it, let's take one together. It'll help block some of those rotten suitors for you. His smile was genuinely warm, but I knew perfectly well what his real goal was. So, on a sudden impulse, I asked, honestly, you're secretly in love with me, aren't you? You broke our agreement, didn't you? He had broken it, but deep down he was still too vain to admit it. Like when I suggested he come pick me up from work, and he insisted on saying it was just on his way. He was planning to use every trick in the book to lure me into his net so that once I finally fell for him and confessed, he could act all calm and composed, just like when we first met, and then graciously grant me a chance at love. Of course, that wasn't something I made up on my own. It was literally what the male lead in his manga thought. He stared at me in stunned silence, his thin lips parting. I could clearly feel how nervous he was. Before he could say anything, I burst into laughter. Haha, I'm teasing you. As if you'd ever like me. Anyway, thanks for the ring, I'll keep it safe. When our contract ends, I'll give it back to you in perfect condition. Back in my bedroom, I switched to my alt account and asked how things had gone today. He sent me the photo of our matching rings that I'd just posted on Moments. Not bad. That guy should be scared off by now. So, have you got any ideas for your manga again? Rose emoji. None at all. It really does feel like she doesn't like me. I couldn't expose him, so I could only pretend to know nothing. Maybe it's just that you don't spend enough time together. You and your wifey both work full-time, right? You hardly ever go on dates? And you sleep in separate rooms. That does make it hard for your relationship to progress. Try to think of ways to create more chances to be together. Who knew getting a manga to update could be this exhausting? Fine. If he wanted to fish, then let him fish. I was ready to bite. When Jeremy said his company was organizing a business trip and he could bring one family member for free, I wasn't surprised at all, but I still pretended to be thrilled as I packed my suitcase. It was a coastal city. We'd done tons of research beforehand, except for checking the weather. The moment we landed, a level 8 typhoon swept through. Even though the hotel windows were thick enough, we could still clearly hear the howling winds outside. I'd already been stuck in the hotel for a full 2 days, completely unable to go out. I was so bored I could scream. What was Jeremy doing? Wasn't he supposed to be reeling me in? How had he not made a single move? In the end, I really couldn't take it anymore. I ran downstairs, bought 2 bottles of fruit wine, and knocked on the door next to mine. He opened the door with damp hair, the collar of his white t-shirt soaked at the front. So he'd just been in the shower. "What's up, Susan?" he asked, playing dumb again. "Go on, keep acting. I'm so bored. We can't go anywhere. Let's play truth or dare. We roll the dice, if it's dare, you drink, if you can't, you answer a truth." I sat cross-legged on the tatami, placing the dice in the center. My plan was to down 2 glasses, then start pretending to be drunk. No matter what he asked, I'd just answer that I liked him. That had to work, right? However, my luck tonight was way too good. 5 rounds, 5 wins. Jeremy just kept his head down and drank. His originally pale cheeks were already faintly flushed. "Do you not usually drink much?" "Hardly ever. I don't like alcohol." On the 6th round, I pressed my hand over the bottle. "Don't drink this one. Pick truth." I hadn't had a single glass yet. I didn't want him passing out first. "No. I want to drink. I don't want truth." "No, no." I was certain Jeremy was drunk now, very drunk. All dazed, he lifted the hand I was using to stop him as if it were a cup and brought it to his lips. "Hey, that's not it." I panicked, but no matter how I tugged, I couldn't get my hand back. Then a damp warmth brushed over the back of my hand. A few gentle kisses. I stared blankly at Jeremy. He was still cradling my hand like it was some priceless treasure. "Jeremy, you're drunk." "I'm not. Not drunk," he mumbled. I was about to stand up and leave, but he was really far gone. He wouldn't let go of my hand, and on top of that, he rubbed his face into my palm. A moment later, his dimples appeared, along with a clear, coaxing smile. My breath caught, and I silently thought, this is bad. Textbook beauty trap. I was really afraid I might actually take the bait. "Jeremy, who am I?" "Susan Clark, my wifey." "No, I'm not your wifey. We're fake. You're the one who wouldn't let me get close to you. I can't break the contract, remember?" He kneeled on the tatami, eyes innocent as a child's, clutching my sleeve in a death grip. "No, it's real. Don't lie to me. You signed a contract with me. Look, I even took a picture. It's all clearly written in black and white. How could I lie to you?" I found it amusing and suddenly felt like teasing him. He leaned in, staring seriously at my phone. When he finally made out the text, he started to act spoiled. "What's this?" My head spinning. "I can't see." "Wow, you're such a cheat. You're the one breaking the contract, and you still want to blame me. I'm done playing with you." I slipped on my slippers and made a show of leaving. The man behind me immediately called out, his voice cracking, "Don't go. Susan, don't go." Jeremy was drunk, and the corners of his eyes were tinged red. I thought he was having an allergic reaction to the alcohol, but the moment my fingers brushed his eye, a tear slipped down. Oh wow, now he was crying. "I don't want that contract anymore. If I'd known living with you would be this happy, I should have started by dating you and then married you. I don't want to be a fake husband." The typhoon was still roaring outside the window, and the man in my arms sobbed and hiccuped for a long time before finally calming down. When Jeremy sobered up, he had completely forgotten everything that had happened the night before. He only remembered chatting with me and then suddenly falling asleep. "What's wrong? Did I say something I shouldn't have?" On the way back home, he grew almost fidgety when he noticed I kept staring at him. I shook my head. "No. You hold your liquor really well. But don't drink alone anymore." Sigh. I'd wanted to use last night's opportunity to take the bait myself, but he'd gone and confessed first. After the holiday ended, I went back to work. The boss who'd confessed to me had already been transferred away. His replacement was a woman in her 30s who didn't talk much and didn't make trouble either. Life was finally peaceful. Slacking off at my desk, I was just about to switch over to my alt so I could ask Jeremy if he'd had any new inspiration for updates lately. Before I could log out, Tim called me to go to the bathroom with her. When I came back, I forgot to switch accounts and sent a very abrupt message from my main. "My lady, have you been feeling motivated to update the comic lately? Didn't you say she even took the initiative to ask you to play games? She definitely has you in her heart if she's the one asking you to play." By the time I realized what I'd done, the message couldn't be recalled. 5 minutes later, I added another line, my account got hacked. Also, don't bother picking me up later, I'm eating out with a coworker. The noodle shop was about to close when I finally dragged myself out and headed home. Walking back into our complex, I was still steeped in despair. Compared to him getting unmasked, I, the reader pretending to be his mediator and feeding him bad ideas, felt like the one suffering true social death. At 10 o'clock, Jeremy was still sitting in the living room. He usually disappeared into his bedroom by 9. I closed the door softly behind me. I had no idea how to start, so I simply didn't say anything. "You're back." I straightened my spine and tried to keep my expression relaxed. Why aren't you in bed yet? Because I was waiting for you. Jeremy's tone was calm, but to me he sounded like a man who'd gone mad with anger and run out of options. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide it from you. I lowered my head and mumbled. He stood up and strode over to me, his breathing suddenly quickening. I thought he was about to yell at me. But when I looked up, what met me instead was a photo he held out. You'd rather go out and eat with him than come home and eat my cooking, isn't that right? In the photo, Tim and I were grinning like idiots, laughing our heads off. Hey, no, Tim, she. Before I could finish, Jeremy cut me off in a rush. I've always known what we have is a transaction. I've tried my best to keep clear boundaries, but I still couldn't control myself. In your eyes, is that comic of mine just a joke? Nothing but a story I made up, completely different from reality. But Susan, why would you sit with another man and laugh at me, and show him my comic on top of that? It's really humiliating. I was utterly bewildered. First of all, I had not been sitting with another man. Second, I'd never treated his comic like a joke. Tim and I had been chatting over dinner, and I'd just recommended the manga I'd been reading lately. No, listen to me, let me explain. I don't want to. In your eyes I'm a joke anyway. I'm never drawing again. I'm going to take it all down right now. The second I heard he was going to delete it, I panicked. Jeremy, I like you. You're not allowed to take down my manga. He turned around. Really? Really? And since when is Tim a man? She's obviously a girl, she just has short hair, that's all. Since things had already blown up this far, I might as well push for more updates while I was at it. I really do love your manga. I honestly had no idea you were the author at first. Before that, I only saw you as a partner in our arrangement. I was grateful to you, that was all. But later I realized. You actually look pretty good. Handsome, good at drawing, and a great cook. He had a lot of strong points, really. His only real weakness was his tolerance for alcohol. I don't feel the same way about you as I did before. It's completely different now. Jeremy's eyes shone, as if he were waiting for me to say more. So, can you please not stop updating? I'm begging you. He turned and walked off. And locked his door behind him for good measure. Had I killed the conversation again? When I opened the app again, wanting to see if the comic had really been taken down, a notice about its return jumped out from the top of the comments. Dear readers, starting tomorrow, updates will resume for free. New chapters every night at 9. Don't be late. I was so happy I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in bed. I tapped on Jeremy's avatar and sent him a sticker. You there, handsome? He replied instantly. Me, suddenly feels a bit chilly tonight. Are you cold? Not really. Is your blanket too thin? Me, I'm a little cold. Could you come over and warm my bed for me? The moment I hit send, I flung the phone aside in embarrassment and dove under the covers. When I looked up again, Jeremy was already standing awkwardly by my bed. So, which side should I sleep on? A year later, that shoujo manga came to an end. I still hadn't had enough and pestered the great artist into drawing a ton of extra side stories. Sweet content, delicious. Sometimes Jeremy would ask, if it hadn't been for that comic, would you still have fallen in love with me? I thought about it. I would have. Because no matter what kind of meal it is, you make it taste amazing. It was only a matter of time. After a long day of work, exhausted to the bone, I'd come home to find a beautiful husband and a freshly cooked dinner waiting. I thought, even a heart made of stone wouldn't be able to resist that. Looking at the newest chapter, I finally recognized every scene as a love letter, to me. The arrogant husband was just my insecure artist, waiting for an answer. I closed the app, climbed into his arms, and told him, from now on, no more hiatus. Let's rewrite us together.